There is only one thing in life worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video essay. I will be discussing Oscar Wilde and the contradicting memory of his physical appearance. Oscar Wilde is arguably the first modern celebrity. His self-promotion and publicity stunts enhanced his profile considerably. One of the most famous instances of this is when Wilde arrived in America saying, "I have nothing to declare but my genius." Whether or not Wilde actually said that is irrelevant. We are still talking about it. Herein lies Wilde's true genius. Wilde's calculated personal appearance enhanced public perception of him. From the long-haired, silk-tights-clad aesthete to the ivory cane and fur coat-wearing Victorian gentleman, Wilde took pride in his dress, as is evident from surviving photographs of him. Just as photography was becoming vogue, Wilde recognized the potential in the medium for promoting himself. In New York, ahead of his American lecture tour in 1882, Wilde hired celebrated photographer Napoleon Cerrone to take his portraits. The images became so widely shared they were used to advertise products, one of the first examples of marketing a brand by associating it with a celebrity's image. It could be argued that Wilde's portraits went viral, in an early sense of the modern phrase. Wilde's portrayal in photos was rehearsed, like his epigrams uttered in conversation. Wilde is mostly remembered for his epigrams. When speaking, he would give the impression to listeners that they were constructed in the moment. This may not have been the case. Before he wrote anything of literary value, Wilde made a name for himself by impressing with his conversation, saying, "A man who can dominate a London dinner table can dominate the world." Helen Modjeska, a Polish actress, remarked on Wilde's early fame as a talker. She said, "What has he done, this young man, that one meets him everywhere? Oh yes, he talks well, but what has he done? He has written nothing, he does not paint or act, he does nothing but talk. I do not understand." So, Wilde knew how to promote himself through word of mouth. Upon meeting him, William Butler Yeats remarked, "I had never before heard a man talking in perfect sentences, as if he had written them all overnight with labour and yet all spontaneous." Wilde's self-promotion was constant throughout his life. Frank Harris, a close friend and later biographer of Wilde, recalled an example of the writer's self-promotion. Harris wrote, "He told me he had been asked by Harper's to write a book of 100,000 words and offered a large sum for it, I think $5,000 in advance. He wrote to them gravely that there were not 100,000 words in English, so he could not undertake the work, and laughed merrily like a child at the cheeky reproof. 'I have sent their letters and my replies to the press,' he added, and laughed again, while probing me with inquisitive eyes. How far did I understand the need for self-advertisement?" Wilde always aimed to elicit particular impression of himself, like many people on social media today. In photos, he appears well-groomed and handsome. However, it seems this impression of him is very misleading because, in person, many people considered Wilde to be quite ugly. Frank Harris's first impression of Wilde was similar to Yeats. He wrote that he was a superb talker, more brilliant than any I have ever heard in England. However, Harris was also struck by Wilde's appearance, saying, "His talk soon made me forget his repellent physical peculiarities. His appearance filled me with distaste. I lay stress on this physical repulsion because I think most people felt it, and in itself it is a tribute to the fascination of the man that he should have overcome the first impression so completely and so quickly." Such a description, and from a close friend of Wilde's, contradicts how Wilde appears in photos. This is an example of Wilde's success at promoting a favourable image of himself. For instance, note that Wilde's teeth are never visible in any photo. This was a very conscious decision on Wilde's behalf, because his teeth were hideous and, by the end of his life, non-existent. Now, it could be argued that Wilde's decision to keep his mouth closed during photographs was a mere result of the length of time it took to have your photo taken in the Victorian era. However, the process was not so long that people didn't smile. Although Wilde could manipulate photos distributed to the masses, he could do little about what others saw in the flesh. Many recollections of Wilde's appearance, particularly his teeth, were equally unfavourable and unflattering. Writer Marcel Schwab described Wilde as a big man with a large pasty face, red cheeks, an ironic eye, bad and protrusive teeth. French author Jules Renard said, "His face is covered with broken veins. He has long, decayed teeth." The repulsiveness of Wilde's teeth is frequently mentioned in testimonies. They seem to have been so bad they were often remembered. Indeed, Frank Harris also noted a black front tooth, which shocked one when he laughed. Wilde also tried to hide his teeth in person as well as in photos. Another friend, Sir Max Beerbohm, described Wilde's way of laughing with hand over mouth. It is rumoured Wilde's discoloured teeth were the result of treatment for syphilis. In the Victorian era, patients were given mercury to deal with the disease. Stephen Fry elaborates on this in an episode of QI.
What did they use for curing it right up until really the turn of the century, the turn of the 19th, 20th century?
Petrol.
It's almost as weird. A poison, they used mercury. Mercury. At Oscar Wilde's trial, it actually came up against him that when he laughed, he put his hand up in front of his mouth, which was considered a sign of effeminacy. But it's probably because he had syphilis and he had taken mercury, which makes the teeth green and transparent and most unpleasant, so he was covering his bad teeth.
Rupert Everett, who starred as Wilde on stage in The Judas Kiss and will reprise the role in the upcoming film The Happy Prince, which he wrote and also directs, described his costume for The Judas Kiss in the New York Times. Everett said, "I had ordered the most incredible fatsuit from the master of disguise, Robert Alsop, replete with baboon moobs, a wobbling midriff, and a marvellous knee-length arse. I had an incredible set of dirty teeth, with enlarged gums to give my cheeks the Oscar silhouette." Describing Wilde's appearance, Lily Langtry, a close friend and muse, remarked upon his well-shaped mouth, with somewhat coarse lips and greenish-hued teeth. Wilde's sister-in-law also noted his teeth, when revealed, were large, irregular, and ugly. The only contradicting description of Wilde's teeth was written by the New York Times upon Wilde's arrival in America in 1882 at the age of 27. They wrote, "When he laughs, his lips part and show a shining row of upper teeth which are superlatively white." Now, it's quite possible Wilde's teeth only got bad in his late 20s. Laura Trubridge, a future neighbour of the Wildes in London, once wrote in her diary about meeting a 29-year-old Oscar Wilde. She said, "Went to a tea party at Cressy's to meet the great Oscar Wilde. He has grown enormously fat with a huge face and tight curls all over his head, not at all the aesthetic he used to look. He is vulgar." Laura Trubridge's husband, Adrian Hope, described meeting Oscar in 1887, aged 33. Hope would actually become guardian to Oscar's children following his imprisonment and the death of his wife Constance. Hope wrote, "Oscar Wilde was at the Lyric Club, fat and greasy as ever and looking particularly revolting in huge white kid gloves. After 2 years of hard labour in prison, Wilde's teeth were so bad he had to wear dentures. We know this because they were among his surviving processions at the Hotel Alsace in Paris, where he died." Merlin Holland, Wilde's grandson, elaborates on this. Holland says, "Jean du Poirier, the hotel owner, kept them as mementos. There was the shirt, 2 trunks of books and magazines, a pile of rough jottings that du Poirier burned, an umbrella that he subsequently lost, and finally a set of false teeth." Few photos survive of Wilde in later life, mostly taken in Italy following his release from prison. The only evident difference between young Wilde and older Wilde is that he gained weight, a fact consistent with testimonies of his appearance. Indeed, Wilde's premeditated poses for his portraits have thus proven immensely successful in the long run. He will forever be the long-haired, handsome dandy reposing with a book, or the fur coat-wearing gentleman, gazing with bright eyes. This is the end of the video essay. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Thank you.